Hello everyone, I welcome you to this lecture 2 of the course Construction Methods and Equipment Management. In this lecture, we will be discussing about the equipment cost estimation. Specifically, we will be discussing about the ownership cost estimation using average annual investment method. Let us have a recap of what we learnt in the lecture 1. So, in the lecture 1, we discussed about the planning process of equipment, highlighting on the equipment selection factors and planning of the equipment utilization using the equipment loading diagram. Okay. So, this is the outline of the today's presentation. So, I will be just introducing to you the significance of the estimation of the cost of the equipment, followed by discussion on what are all the components of the equipment cost, components of the ownership cost, and we will be discussing about the different depreciation accounting methods to estimate the depreciation of equipment, followed by illustrations on how to estimate the ownership cost of the equipment using average annual investment method. Okay. So, let us see what is the significance of the estimation of the cost associated with the machine. Knowledge of cost estimation is very important for profitable equipment management, and we know that equipment cost estimate serves as a basis for the bid preparation of a project. Generally, when we go for bid preparation, planning of your bid, the unit rate what you are quoting, it involves a component of your equipment also. Okay. So, when we underestimate the cost of equipment because of lack of knowledge on how to estimate the cost of equipment, if you are underestimating the cost of the equipment, you may overestimate your profit. So, finally, the contractors or the project estimators, they end up in real problem. Okay. So, that is why equipment cost estimate is very important for profitable equipment management. Okay. So, in the last lecture also we discussed that during the selection process of equipment, we should have knowledge on how to estimate the productivity of equipment and the cost associated with the equipment. Both these are very important factors for the planning your equipment selection also. Okay. So, to know the exact component of your equipment, component of a project cost, we should have a knowledge on how to estimate the equipment cost. So, let us see what are all the important components of the equipment cost. So, these are the two main important components. One is your ownership cost, other one is the operating cost. Okay. So, ownership cost is nothing but this cost we incur every year regardless of whether your equipment is operated or idle. Okay. So, that means whether your equipment is employed productively in a project site or it is going to remain idle. In both the cases, we are going to incur some fixed ownership costs every year. Okay. So, these are relatively fixed costs which occur every year. Okay. So, many times we can see that the project estimators, they overlook the ownership cost. There are different components of the ownership cost which should be also be included in the estimation of the cost of the machine. Okay. So, people think that only when the equipment is operated, we are incurring cost. Okay. So, that is how they make wrong estimation of the cost of equipment. And other part is your operating cost. These are the costs incurred only when the equipment is used. Okay. So, that means when you are using your equipment, the more you use the equipment, operating cost will be more, the fuel consumption will be more. It also depends upon your project conditions. Okay. So, we will be discussing in depth about the various components of this ownership cost and the operating cost in the upcoming slides. So, one thing we should always keep it in mind is all the above costs must be recovered through profitable use of equipment. That means we have invested a huge amount of cost in the equipment, different components of ownership cost are there, different forms of operating cost are there. So, huge amount of cost is invested in the equipment. Okay. So, the equipment should be used productively in the project site and it should be able to recover all the cost associated with it and it should be able to generate profit for us. Okay. So, that is what they call, they say commonly, equipment must pay for itself. Okay. That means it should work productively and recover all the cost invested and generate profit for us. Now, let us see what are all the components of the ownership cost. So, these are the different components of the ownership cost, your initial cost, your depreciation, the cost of investment, that is interest on the money invested, taxes, insurance and storage. Okay. So, these are all the different components of the ownership cost which we are going to discuss one by one now. Okay. So, first is the initial cost. Everyone is aware of the purchase cost of the machine. So, it includes the price at the factory plus any extra equipment you may need for the installation purpose or maybe some accessories you may need, okay, including everything. So, initial cost includes all the extra components, the sales tax, okay, and the freight charges. the delivery charges or transportation charges or the freight charges needed for the mobilization of your equipment to the project site. Okay, and also the cost of assembly and erection of your equipment. It means it includes all the costs, including the purchase price and the mobilizing the equipment to the site and getting it ready for the operation. So what are all the costs involved in this entire process of purchase, mobilization and the getting it ready for the operation? All these things comes under the initial cost. So approximately you can say it amounts to 25% of the total cost invested in the equipment's useful life. So it is a significant proportion of the total the cost invested in the machine. So generally the other components of the equipment cost are usually expressed as a percentage of initial cost, because it is easier to accurately estimate the initial cost. So to get the values of initial cost, it's easier. So the other components are usually expressed as a percentage of the initial cost. So now let us move on to the next important component of the ownership cost, which is the depreciation. So depreciation is nothing but loss in value of the equipment between the time it is purchased and the time it is replaced. So as everyone knows, equipment is an asset. So every asset will lose its value with time. Okay, there is a loss in value always with the time. This loss in value may be due to the increase in age of the machine, due to wear and tear, or due to loss in productivity of the machine due to age, or due to increase in repair and maintenance cost, or your machine might have become technologically obsolete. There may be some new competitive models in the market which may be more technologically competitive than the machine which you are possessing, like the productivity of the new models in the market may be greater than the machine what we are possessing. Okay, so it might have become technologically obsolete, or the customer taste would have changed. So there may be different reasons for the loss in value of the machine with the age of the machine. So this loss in value is called as a depreciation. Okay, so this is a very important component of the ownership cost. This is not actually a physical cash flow, but still it is considered as an expenditure in the cash flow analysis. It is considered as a component of the ownership cost when you do the estimation purpose. So say graphically we can represent it like this. Okay, like you have this age of the equipment in the x-axis and the value of the asset in the y-axis. Okay, so now you can see that when you purchase the equipment, the initial price will be like this. So say this is the useful life of the machine, N. So you have purchased the machine by paying this initial cost. So what is this N? So N refers to the useful life of the machine. So that means beyond this particular period, your equipment does not have any utility. So it is not economical to hold this particular equipment beyond this useful life. We have to either scrap it or sell it at a reasonable price to any buyer. So that period is called a useful life. You can also call it as service life or recovery period. So there are different ways to call this. Okay, so basically it means the time interval between the moment you make the purchase of the machine and the moment you scrap it. This time interval is called as the service life of the machine. This is basically for the accounting purpose. In many cases you can see beyond the service life also, that machine may be functioning in the project site. It may not be physically scrapped. In that case it is actually a bonus for us. Okay, so basically useful life refers to the period during which your machine is going to be of utility value to you. Beyond that, it is not economical to hold the machine, even though if it is the functioning in the project site, it is not economical to hold. Maybe its productivity may be less, or its repair and maintenance cost would have increased due to the age. Okay, so that is what is the definition of useful life of the machine. So at the end of this life, say for example, this is the end of the useful life. If I am able to sell this machine at the end of this life at a particular value, say that is called as the salvage value. Okay, so salvage value is nothing but the cash inflow which we get at the end of the useful life of the machine by selling the machine at a reasonable price. That is called as a salvage value. Okay, so now the total depreciation should be the difference between the initial cost and the salvage value. So the total depreciation should be equal to your initial cost minus your salvage value. So if I wanted to know the annual depreciation every year, then in that case I have to calculate, divide it by the number of years, the useful life of the machine. So this will give you the annual depreciation. Okay. So another advantage of estimating depreciation is that you can get to know what is the current value of your machine, current book value. Book value means the value of the asset which you enter in your accounting book for the recording purpose. So what is the current value of the asset? I can estimate if I know the depreciation of the machine. Say for example, at a particular age, say this particular age, I wanted to know the current value of the asset. So what is the value? We have to calculate by, if you know the initial cost and if you know the accumulated depreciation over this particular period. So if you want to estimate the book value at a particular period, to know the initial cost and the accumulated depreciation over the particular period. If you know these two data, we can find the book value at a particular period. So book value is nothing but your initial cost minus the accumulated depreciation till that particular period. Say for example, if you wanted to know the current value of the asset at this particular age, then if you know the initial cost and if you know the accumulated depreciation over this period, you can find the book value. Okay. So this helps you to give you the get an idea about the current value of the asset. It's very important parameter, because if you know the current value of your equipment, it will help you to fix the rental charges for the machine. So if someone is renting your equipment, if this current value of the asset will give you a data how to fix up the rental charges. Okay. So this is the importance of depreciation. You can also, with the help of depreciation, we can know the current value of your asset. So what are all the input needed to estimate the depreciation? So important thing is your initial cost, your useful life and the salvage value. If you have these three important input, then you can estimate the depreciation. Initial cost, you can know it accurately, you can get the information easily. But these two are a little bit uncertain, because how long the machine is going to be useful, what will be the end of the useful life, at what point of period you are going to scrap your machine. So that depends upon your usage of the machine, depends upon the project condition. So based upon your past experience with similar type of the machine, you can get the information approximately about the useful life of the machine. Similarly, at the end of the useful life, at what price you are going to sell it, or at a reasonable price, or you are going to resell it. Okay. So this is called as a salvage value. So this is also a little bit uncertain. Okay. So approximately you can estimate based upon your past experience with a similar equipment. Okay. So with these three input parameters, you can estimate your depreciation associated with the machine. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, your depreciation estimation will help you to derive the rental charges for the equipment. So you can know the current value, what is the book value of the asset. Book value means the for the accounting purpose, in the accounting book you record the current value of the asset. So that value you can get it if you are able to estimate the depreciation of the machine. So there are different accounting methods to estimate the depreciation. Okay. So let us see the important accounting methods which are commonly used by the various construction companies. So they are the straight line method, sum of the years digit method and your double declining balance method. So we are going to discuss these depreciation methods, accounting methods one by one. So first is your straight line method. Okay. As the name indicates, the depreciation is going to be uniform. So if you look into the trend, so we drawn this diagram earlier, age of the equipment and the value of the asset. So with increase in age, you can see that the loss in value will be linear. So in this straight line method, we assume that the depreciation rate is uniform over its useful life. So the rate is uniform over the useful life. Every year the machine is going to lose the same value. That is what is the assumption for the accounting purpose. That means D1 equal to D2 equal to Dn. Every year the depreciation is going to be same. Now how to calculate the depreciation? So depreciation is nothing but your initial cost, okay, whatever you purchase, initial cost, and at the end of the useful life, what price you are going to sell. Salvage value, okay, yes, or whatever way you indicate. Yes, yeah, salvage value is yes, okay. And one more important thing you have to note is you are going to deduct the tire cost. So because your tire depreciates at a different rate from the rest of the equipment, particularly rubber tires. You can see that the life of the rubber tire will be different from the life of the remaining part of the equipment. Okay, so the tire will depreciate faster. Okay, so that is why we consider the tire cost under the operating cost. It is not considered under the ownership cost estimation. So you deduct the tire cost from the initial cost. So this will give you the total depreciation divided by the number of years in the useful life of the machine. That will give you the annual depreciation every year. So here the rate of depreciation is 1 by n. Depreciation factor is 1 by n. This is the easiest method and more convenient method to calculate the depreciation, but it is not commonly adopted because this gives lesser amount of depreciation in the early age of the machine. So lesser amount of depreciation is experienced when you use this method. Okay, so that is why they say it is not giving you a realistic value. People always prefer to have accelerated depreciation. Okay, they prefer to have higher depreciation. Okay, for the accounting purpose. This is because your depreciation expenses are not accounted in taxable income. So it is not accounted in the taxable income. So you will be able to get the tax benefits by projecting higher depreciation for an accounting purpose. That is why people always prefer to go for the accounting method, which will give you higher or accelerated depreciation, so that they can get the tax benefits, because depreciation expenses are not accounted in the taxable income. So now let us move on to the next method of estimation of depreciation, that is your sum of the years digit depreciation method. So how this method is going to be different from the earlier method, we will see now. Okay, so here this is an accelerated method when compared to the straight line method. That means it will give you higher depreciation in the early age of the machine. During the early ages of machine, it projects higher depreciation. Okay, so how do you calculate here? Annual depreciation is nothing but your depreciation factor multiplied by initial cost minus salvage value minus tire cost. Okay, so this is the depreciation factor or the rate of depreciation for this method. So how do you calculate this depreciation factor? It is nothing but number of years left in the recovery period to sum of the years in the recovery period. Okay, so this is how we calculate the depreciation factor. In straight line method, the depreciation factor was 1 by n. Okay, here it is number of years left in the recovery period. As I told you, your useful life, your service period, recovery period, everything means the same. Why we call it as recovery period? Because we are going to recover all the cost invested in the machine during the useful life of the machine. Okay, so that is why we call it as a recovery period. Okay, so now say for example, if I am going to calculate the depreciation for the first year, D1, what will be in the numerator for the depreciation factor? Number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of the year for which you are going to calculate the depreciation to the end of the useful life. So from the beginning of this year to the end of the useful life, what is the number of years left? Say for example, the useful life of the machine n equal to 5. So number of years left in the recovery period will be 5 divided by sum of the years of the useful life of the machine, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 multiplied by initial cost minus salvage value minus tire cost. This is how we calculate the depreciation for the first year. Okay, so now how to calculate the depreciation for the second year? Second year, so number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of second year to the end of useful life. So it will be equal to 4. Already 1 year is completed. So 4 divided by 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. So multiplied by initial cost minus salvage value minus tire cost. This will give you the depreciation for the second year. Similarly, depreciation for the last year, D5, it will be equal to 1. Number of years left in the recovery period is 1. 1 divided by 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 multiplied by initial cost minus salvage value minus tire cost. So one shortcut you can remember is a year and digit are in reverse order. If you are calculating the depreciation for the first year, the digit in the numerator will be in the reverse order. Second year, it is equal to 4. Okay, for fifth year, the digit in the numerator will be 1. So year and digit in the numerator are in reverse order. So keep that in mind. So if you are going to calculate the depreciation for the first year, the digit in the numerator will be n. So if you are going to calculate the depreciation for the last year, okay, and the digit in the numerator will be 1, okay. That's what is given. So it is a more accelerated depreciation method and more realistic. People prefer the accelerated depreciation, as I told you, because of the tax benefits they get, okay, because of the depreciation expenses. Now let us move on to the next method of estimating the depreciation. It is nothing but your double declining balanced depreciation method. So this method is more accelerated method when compared to the sum of the years digit method. That means the depreciation estimated is going to be more in the early age of the machine, even when compared to sum of the years digit method. Okay, people more commonly prefer this method, as I told you, to enjoy the tax benefits. And one more important thing to be noted here is, here we are depreciating the instantaneous book value of the equipment. Okay, so we don't consider the way we did the estimation of the sum of the years digit method. There we used to estimate initial cost minus salvage value. So in that way we don't estimate here. We don't even use the salvage value in the estimation of the depreciation. Okay, you are going to depreciate the book value of the machine, instantaneous book value of the machine. Okay, let us see how it goes. Here depreciation is calculated as, you can see this is the depreciation factor 2 by n multiplied by book value at the end of the previous year minus the tire cost. Okay, so 2 by n for straight line method, hope you remember, the depreciation factor was 1 by n. So it is double the straight line method. That is why it is called as double declining balanced depreciation method. It is also called as 200% declining balance method. There is some other method called as 150% declining balance method also. Okay, so but today in this lecture we are going to discuss only about 200% declining balance method. It is called as double declining balance method, and this factor is fixed. Okay, this depreciation factor is fixed. That is why it is also called as fixed depreciation method. Okay, and one more important thing you have to note here is your ratio of depreciation dn divided by the book value. This ratio is going to be fixed for every year. Okay, dn divided by book value is going to be fixed for every year. And how to calculate this book value? So already I told you in the previous slide. Okay, like book value, to know the book value you should know the initial cost minus the accumulated depreciation. Okay, if you are going to calculate the book value for every year, say for example I need book value at the end of year 1. Okay, so end of year 1 I need to know the book value. So you should know the book value at the beginning of year 1. So if you know the book value at the beginning of year 1 minus the depreciation for the particular year, okay, then you can calculate the book value at the end of year. This is how we are going to calculate. So book value at the end of year is equal to book value at the beginning of the particular year minus the depreciation for the particular year. And one more important thing to be noted here is, your book value at the beginning of a particular year is same as book value at the end of previous year. Okay, this also you should know. So book value at the beginning of a particular year is same as book value at the end of the previous year. And during this analysis, when you estimate the depreciation, you have to make sure that your book value should never go below the estimated salvage value of the machine. So this thing you have to keep it in mind. Book value should be greater than or equal to the salvage value. So if suppose there are many chances that your estimated book value at the end of the useful life may go below the salvage value. Okay, if that situation occurs, you have to recalculate, back calculate. So back calculate the depreciation in such a way that your estimated book value should be made equal to the salvage value. Okay, you should never go below the salvage value. Okay, when we do some illustrations, you will be able to understand better. So this method calculates the accelerated depreciation rate than the sum of years digit method. And one more thing to be noted is, you are not using the salvage value during estimation of depreciation. So this also you should keep in mind. Now let us work out an example on how to estimate the depreciation by all the three methods which we have discussed so far. So this is a problem. A twin engine scraper machine has an initial cost of 82 lakh. It includes a tire cost of 6 lakh. The expected salvage value of the equipment at the end of useful life of 9 years. Okay, the useful life of the machine is 9 years and the salvage value is 12 lakh. That means at the end of 9 years, I will be able to sell this machine at 12 lakh. Okay, that is my salvage value. Now expected annual use of the equipment is 2400 hours. So it depends upon how many hours you are going to use the equipment every day. Say for example, you are going to use the equipment 10 hours per day, and depending on number of days the equipment is operated in a year, you can calculate the annual use of the machine in hours. Now estimate the depreciation of the equipment. Now let us summarize the input data. Initial cost is given 82 lakh, tire cost is 6 lakh, useful life of the machine is 9 years, and the salvage value is 12 lakh. First let us use the straight line method to estimate the depreciation. Okay. So your depreciation is nothing but your initial cost minus salvage value minus tire cost divided by n. So here the factor of depreciation is 1 by n. So 82 lakh, okay, is the initial cost, your salvage value is 12 lakh, and your tire cost is 6 lakh. So divide by 9, you will get the annual depreciation for every year. Okay, so you will get the annual depreciation for every year. It's going to be the same for every year. It's a straight line method. So next is your sum of the years digit method. Okay, so here how do you calculate the depreciation for the first year? Your depreciation for the first year, when you calculate, so number of years left in the recovery period is, say, n equal to 9. So number of years left in the recovery period is 9, divided by the sum of the years in the useful life, 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9, multiplied by your initial cost minus your salvage value minus tire cost. So this will give you the depreciation for the first year. Similarly, depreciation for the second year, number of years left in the recovery period is nothing but number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of the second year to the end of the useful life of the machine is 8 year. Okay, 8. So divided by the sum of the years in the useful life multiplied by your initial cost minus tire cost minus salvage value. Similarly, you calculate the depreciation for every year. Say for example, depreciation for the 9th year, it should be number of years left in the recovery period will be 1, divided by 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 multiplied by initial cost minus salvage value. Okay. So this is how you estimate the depreciation using sum of the years digit method. Now let us move on to the double declining balance method. In double declining balance method, it's totally different from the earlier methods. As I told you, here we are not using salvage value in the estimation of the depreciation of the machine. So you are going to depreciate the instantaneous book value. So for the first year, what is the book value at the beginning of the year? It is 76 lakh. How did you get the 76 lakh? Your initial cost is 82 lakhs minus your tire cost is 6 lakhs. So that will give you the book value at the beginning of year 76 lakhs. Now what is the depreciation for the year 1? It is nothing but 2 by n multiplied by book value. So already we have deducted the tire cost. So we need not deduct the tire cost every time. So 2 by n multiplied by the book value. So n is 9. Okay. So 2 by your n is 9 multiplied by the book value is nothing but your 76 lakhs. So that gives you the depreciation. Okay. Once the depreciation is estimated, now what is the book value at the end of the year? It is nothing but your book value at the beginning of year minus your depreciation. That gives you the book value at the end of the year. So book value at the beginning of year is 76 lakh and depreciation is 16 lakh 88,888. When you subtract both, you will get the book value at the end of the year. So this is how we estimate. Now book value at the end of year will become the book value at the beginning of the next year. So book value at the beginning of next year is 59 lakh 11,111.11. Now the same way you calculate the depreciation, 2 by n is 9 multiplied by the book value will give the depreciation. So once you know the depreciation, again calculate the book value at the end of the year. It's nothing but book value at the beginning of year minus your depreciation, that gives you book value at the end of the year. Now the book value at the end of this year becomes the book value at the beginning of the next year, third year. The same way you calculate the depreciation for all the years. Okay. One important thing here you have to note here, as I told you, there are more chances that your book value estimated can go below the salvage value. Okay. So say for example for the 8th year, I have estimated the depreciation. Now when I estimate the book value at the end of the year, you can see it is 10 lakh. It is 10 lakh 17,000, 10 lakh 17,789. Okay, so your salvage value is 12 lakh. So it has gone below the salvage value. So this is not accepted. Now you back calculate. So that is why I have calculated for the 8th year again. So how do you back calculate? Okay, so book value at the end of the 7th year is in the beginning of your 8th year. Now you fix up the book value at the end of 8th year. It cannot go below salvage value. So fix the book value as 12 lakh. Now you back calculate the depreciation. Okay, so the book value at the beginning of the year minus 12 lakh gives you the depreciation. Okay, so you have to back calculate. Okay, now for the 9th year depreciation will be 0 because I cannot depreciate further. I have already reached the salvage value. So that is why depreciation is 0. So finally you can see at the end of the 9th year your salvage value is 12 lakh as estimated earlier. Okay, so this is how we estimate the depreciation using double declining balance method. Now let us compare the depreciation by estimated using 3 different methods. You can see straight line method, depreciation is always same every year. So when you compare some of the years as well as and the double declining method, you can see that your double declining method is giving you accelerated depreciation. That means more depreciation in the early age of the machine when compared to the other methods. So more depreciation in the early age of the machine. So when compared to the other methods, this is what people prefer, as I told you, to get the tax benefits. But however, selecting the depreciation is totally a business policy decision. There is no constraint on any project estimator or any company that they have to follow only this particular depreciation method for accounting purpose. So they are free to choose any method according to their business policy, but generally people prefer only more accelerated method. So this double declining method is more commonly used. Okay, this is just a graphical representation of the depreciation values estimated by 3 different methods. You can see straight line method is always constant. Double declining method, yeah, this one is giving you the accelerated depreciation, more depreciation in the early age of the life of the machine. The same way, you can also compare the book value. So you can see that in the straight line method, there is a linear reduction. So the reduction in the book value is linear. But for the other 2 methods, it is non-linear, and you can see for the double declining method, it is more accelerated. Okay, so this is more accelerated the depreciation. The book value reduction is more. So one thing to be noted is the rate of reduction is differing for different methods. So when you compare your the straight line method and the sum of the years digit method, you can keep in mind that the total depreciation will be same. The total depreciation, there is a difference between your initial cost minus salvage value, is going to be the same, but the rate of reduction will be different. Okay, depreciation factor is different. But in double declining method, the way you estimate the depreciation, and there are more chances that the total depreciation may not be the same. Okay, so and your book value can go below the estimated salvage value. So then we have to back calculate and make it equal to the salvage value. So another important factor which we are going to discuss today is about switching between different depreciation methods. This is very important. As I told you, DDB stands for double declining balance, the depreciation method. So DDB method does not automatically produce a book value equal to the salvage value at the end of the recovery period. Many cases you can see that the estimated book value can go below the salvage value. So now we have to make the book value to intersect with the salvage value. That is why I told you in the earlier example we back calculated the depreciation. So that is one way. Here we can also use this methodology where they switch between different depreciation methods. Okay, they switch between switch from one depreciation method to another depreciation method, so that your estimated book value should match with your salvage value. Okay, so you can switch from one depreciation method to the another, mostly from the DDB method to the straight line method. The reason why we switch, as I told you, we have to accelerate the depreciation of the book value. People prefer acceleration of the depreciation of the book value of the assets to get the income tax benefits. That is why, as we discussed in double declining balance method, in the early age you can see that the depreciation will be more when compared to straight line method. But as the age of the equipment increases, your at some point of time your straight line method depreciation may become more than the double declining balance method. In that case, you can switch over from the double declining balance method to straight line method, so that I can get the benefits of higher depreciation to get the tax benefits, okay, just for the accounting purpose. Okay, so this switching method helps you to accelerate your depreciation, okay, so that you can get your tax benefits. And another important reason, just now what we discussed, is your estimated book value should match your estimated salvage value. Book value at the end of useful life should intersect with your salvage value. So this is another reason why we go for switching over between different depreciation methods. So switching occurs when as I discussed just now, switching occurs when the annual depreciation calculated by the straight line method exceeds the depreciation calculated by the DDB method. It occurs as the initial stage of DDB may be higher than the straight line method. As the age of the equipment increases, so your DDB method depreciation may go below the straight line method. In that case, we have to switch over. Or another case where we switch over is when the depreciation calculated by your DDB method produces book value less than the salvage value. This we do not want to occur. We want the book value at the end of useful life to match with the salvage value. Okay. So in that case also we have to switch over from one method to the another method. Switching will ensure that the book value does not fall below the estimated salvage value. Okay. So when we do this the switching process, okay, so we have to remember, like when we estimate the depreciation by straight line method, the formula will not be the same as a regular straight line depreciation. Okay, how it is different when we to switch over, let us see now. Okay, so for straight line method, when we switch over with the depreciation according to this formula, it is nothing but your book value at the beginning of that year, okay, minus tire cost minus salvage value as usual, divided by number of years remaining from the beginning of that year till the end of the useful life. So this is how we calculate the depreciation using straight line method when we follow the switching process. So in your regular straight line method, the depreciation we take initial cost. So here we are taking book value at the beginning of every year. For every year we are calculating the depreciation, and that is going to be different here, and we have to estimate the book value at the beginning of every year for the depreciation calculation. And in the earlier method, when I discussed the straight line method, n, we have to take the total n is the number of years in the useful life of the machine. But here, similar to your sum of years digit method formula, here we are taking number of years left in the recovery period. Number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of the year for which you are going to calculate the depreciation till the end of the useful life. So this is how we are calculating the n here. So number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of the year for which you are going to calculate the depreciation till the end of the useful life. So this will give you the annual depreciation when we do the switching process. Okay, and here you have to note that even when you go for straight line method, depreciation every year is going to be different in this approach. Okay. Okay, when we work out the illustration, you will understand better. Okay, so now you compare the depreciation calculated by the DDB method. Every time you have to compare the depreciation calculated by the DDB method and straight line method. Whichever gives you higher depreciation, that depreciation will be used for book value estimation. So this guideline you have to keep in mind. Okay, every time you calculate the depreciation by both the methods, whichever depreciation is higher, use that depreciation for the estimation of the book value. That year you are going to switch over from this method to the next method. Now let us work out an illustration on how to do the switching process from the DDB method to the straight line method. So okay, I have used the same input data for the previous problem. Okay, it's just a continuation, but I'm just going to show you the methodology of switching from one method to the another depreciation method. So the initial cost is same, 82 lakh, tire cost is 6 lakh, and salvage value is 12 lakh, and the useful life of the machine, as you know earlier, it is going to be n equal to 9. So the book value at the beginning of the year is 76 lakh. You know how we estimated. Your 82 lakh minus 6 lakh, initial cost minus tire cost, gives you the book value at the beginning of the year. Now you calculate the depreciation using the straight line method. Straight line method, we just now discussed how to estimate like it is nothing but your the book value at the beginning of the year 76 lakh minus your salvage value divided by number of years left in the recovery period. So at the beginning of year 1, from the beginning of year 1 if you calculate, number of years left in the recovery period is 9 because n equal to 9, okay, n equal to 9. So number of years left in the recovery period is 9. So now you estimate your depreciation. 76 lakh minus 12 lakh divided by 9, that will give you the depreciation. Now depreciation by DDB method you already know, it is nothing but your the 2 by n multiplied by the book value. Okay, this is how you estimate. We have already estimated, I am not going to repeat explain the calculations again, but one thing I have to note here is, here n refers to 9, okay, it is a total number of years in the useful life of the machine, okay, so n is fixed every year. So here we are not going to change the n every year. So this is how we estimate the double declining balance depreciation value. Now the end of year is nothing but your book value at the beginning of the year 76 lakh, and whichever depreciation is higher, compare straight line method and DDB. Obviously a DDB method depreciation is higher, so you are going to use this for the book value estimation. So your book value at the end of year is 59 lakh 11,111.11. So book value at the end of this year becomes a book value at the beginning of the next year. The same way calculate the straight line depreciation. Okay. Now the number of years left in the recovery period from the beginning of the second year to the end of the useful life is 8. Okay, that is why 8. Okay, number of years left in the recovery period 8. Now this is your book value at the beginning of this year minus your salvage value. Okay, this gives you the depreciation. Now straight DDB method you can calculate. Now the book value at the end of the year is nothing but book value at the beginning of year minus whichever depreciation is higher. Obviously depreciation of DDB is higher, so I have taken that. So this is your book value at the end of year. Similarly you continue, like book value at the end of this year becomes the book value beginning of the next year. Okay, number of years left in the recovery period now is 7. Okay, already 2 years are completed. From the beginning of third year till the end of the useful life it is 7. Okay, the same way you calculate the depreciation for all the years. But one thing you have to note here is, in 8th year what is happening, 8th year your straight line depreciation is 54,293. Your double declining balance depreciation is 2,90,796. So which depreciation is higher? Obviously I have to go for this only, DDB. So when I take the DDB, okay, when I estimate my book value, okay, so book value at the beginning of the year minus a DDB depreciation gives you the book value at the end of the year. You can see that your book value at the end of year falls below your salvage value. Your salvage value is 12 lakhs. So it falls below the salvage value. So now I have to switch over from DDB method to straight line method because your depreciation estimated is higher. Okay, your depreciation estimated is higher. So I have to use the straight line depreciation so that I can bring the book value to the salvage value. So for that purpose I have to switch over. So now how I am going to switch over, you can see here the same book value at the beginning of the year. Now I take straight line depreciation for the estimation of book value. This is my new book value. Okay. So this book value will be used in the estimation of the next depreciation. So book value at the end of 8th year becomes the book value at the beginning of 9th year. So now I have switched over from DDB method to straight line method. You can switch over only once. Okay. So hereafter we are going to confine to the straight line method of depreciation. So you can see that we calculate the depreciation by straight line method. The book value at the beginning of year minus your the salvage value of the machine. It gives you 54,293. That is your depreciation. So how will you calculate the book value at the end of the year? It is nothing but book value at the beginning of year is 12,54,293.05 minus your depreciation by straight line method is 54,293.05. So that gives you 12 lakh. So this is your estimated salvage value. So the book value at the end of useful life is coinciding with the salvage value. That is the purpose of switching over. Okay, we switched over in the 8th year from DDB method to straight line method so that I can intersect my book value at the end of the useful life of the machine with the salvage value of the machine. So switching from DDB method to straight line method, we have done it in the 8th year. So because of the switch over, I am able to see that the book value at the end of 9th year is same as the estimated salvage value. So this is the benefit of switching over from one method to another method. So as I told you, one requirement is to match the book value at the end of useful life to salvage value, and another requirement is to accelerate the depreciation so that I can get the tax benefits. Okay. So we have discussed so far about how to estimate the depreciation using different accounting methods, and we have compared the depreciation values achieved using 3 different methods, that is straight line method, sum of the years digit method, and double declining balance method. And we even compared the book values. We found the difference between the different accounting methods, and we also discussed how to switch over from one depreciation accounting method to another depreciation accounting method to get the benefits of higher depreciation, or to match the estimated the book value at the end of the useful life of the machine with the salvage value of the machine. Okay. So what are the advantages of going for switching over from one depreciation to another depreciation method also we have discussed so far. Now let us move on to the next important component of the ownership cost, that is your cost of investment. Okay. So investment cost, it represents the annual cost of capital invested in the machine. Okay. So it is similar to the cost of acquiring the ownership of the machine. So you might have purchased the machine or the equipment either through borrowed funds, or you might have purchased either with your own company assets. Okay. So in both the cases you have to go for the cost of investment. Say if you are going for the borrowed funds, say for example if you are going for the loan, so the interest rate what you pay for the loan, that will be considered as the cost of the interest. So if you are going for the company assets, in that case also you have to take the interest rate as a rate of return. Say for example, instead of investing this money in the purchase of machine, if you have invested this particular money in something else, you might have achieved some rate of return. Okay. So that rate of return should be taken as the cost of investment. Okay. So in this case, when you purchase the equipment with your own company assets, so you have to take the interest rate equal to the rate of the return. So in both the cases, whether you are going for borrowed funds or you have purchased from your own company assets, in both the cases you have to take the cost of investment. So either in this case the interest may be the interest for the loan what you are paying, in this case the interest rate may be the rate of return you might have achieved by investing the money in something else instead of buying the equipment. So basically investment cost is nothing but your interest rate multiplied by your value of your equipment. Okay. So you can see that interest rate multiplied by the value of equipment gives you the investment cost. So the cost of investment can be calculated by 2 different methods. As I told you earlier, one is the time value method, other one is your average annual investment method. So time value method is going to be very accurate method. Actually there will be a separate lecture dedicated on this topic. I will just introduce to you what is this time value method as of now. So basically you know that the cash flows are occurring at different the time intervals. Okay. In any construction firm, if you see your inflows and outflows will be occurring at different period of time. Okay. So when you are making some analysis, okay, so we have to convert all the cash flows which are occurring at different time period to a particular time period. You have to convert it into a equivalent value at a particular time period and then make the comparison or the analysis. So that will be more rational. Okay. So that is why we are considering the timing of cash flows in the time value method, which is more accurate. So the cost of investment can be exactly calculated by considering the time value of money. So you will be using some appropriate compound interest factors in this method. So to convert the cash flows which are occurring at different time interval to a particular time period, I need to use some compounding interest factors. So you will be making use of that in the time value method, which is more accurate. There is another method which is going to be approximate. It is called as average annual investment method. So in this method you are going to calculate the thing approximately as a percentage of average annual investment over the useful life of the machine. That means your cost of investment will be expressed as a percentage of average value of machine. So you know that your machine is going to depreciate gradually over a period of time. Okay, over its useful life it is going to depreciate. So in order to make our calculations convenient, as you know that all the components of the ownership cost which are expressed as a percentage of the value of the machine, it will also depreciate according to the value of the machine. To make our calculations easier, let us approximate or fix up an average value of the machine and express all the components of the ownership cost as a percentage of the average value of the machine. Okay, so this is what we do in the average annual investment method. So here we will calculate the cost of investment as the percentage of average value of machine over its useful life. How to calculate the average value of the machine, we are going to see in the upcoming slides. The next important components of the ownership cost are the insurance cost, taxes and the storage cost. So the insurance cost, just like the insurance premium which we pay for our cars and other equipments, so we need to pay the insurance premium also for the construction equipment to protect the owner from the financial loss, either in case of fire or theft or accident or whatever case. So to protect the owner from the financial loss, so we pay some insurance premium. Okay, so that is a part of the ownership cost. Okay, so this insurance cost will be usually expressed as the percentage of the value of your machine. So typical value may range from 1 to 3% of the value of your the machine. Okay, so it depends upon the value of the machine, it depends upon the location. Okay, it will vary depending upon the location. And another thing is your tax cost. So it is the property, it's an asset. So you have to pay the property tax. For the equipment, you have to pay the property tax to the government. So the cost of the property tax and the licenses for the equipment will come under this tax cost. So the typical values as reported in the literature, it varies from 2 to 5%, okay, of the value of your machine. This will also vary according to the location, okay, vary from place to place. So then storage cost. See, when the equipment is not operating, we have to store it in the storage yard. So the rental charges what you pay for the storage yard, and the maintenance charges for the storage yard, and the wages what you pay for the security guard, all these are considered under the storage cost. So the rental charges and the maintenance charges for the storage facility, and for the security guard for the storage facility, we have to pay the wages. All these things comes under the storage cost. So the typical values will vary from 0.5 to 1.5% of the value of the machine. So all these components of the ownership cost are expressed as a percentage of average annual investment or the average value of the machine. Just now in the previous slide we have discussed what is the average value of the machine. So these components of the ownership cost are expressed as a percentage of the average annual investment or the average value of the machine or the percentage of the book value in a given year. So this information we may be getting it on a fleet basis, entire equipment fleet basis, then you can prorate it to the individual or each equipment according to your requirement. So the entire information may be available for the entire equipment fleet. Okay, so this you have to prorate it to each equipment. So let us summarize what are all the components of the ownership cost we have discussed so far. So the components of the ownership cost are the depreciation, the cost of investment, insurance cost, the property taxes and the storage cost. All these sums up to your ownership cost. So ownership cost can be calculated by two different methods, average annual investment method and time value method. So in today's lecture we are going to discuss about the average annual investment method, which is an approximate method of estimation of the cost of investment. So average annual investment method. How to estimate this average annual investment over the useful life of the machine, or how to find the average value of the machine over its useful life. So that is what we are going to discuss now. Average value of the machine over the useful life is equal to the average value of the book value at the beginning of the first year and the beginning of the last year of the useful life of the equipment. When you take the average of these two values, you will get the average value of the machine over its useful life. So the first outflow, what is happening, that is your purchase. So the average of book value at the beginning of first year is nothing but your purchase price, purchase cost, and beginning of the last year of the useful life of the equipment. So that book value you have to take. Both the book values, if you find the average, you will get the average value of the machine. So, and one more important thing which I told you earlier also. So book value at the beginning of a particular year is equal to the book value at the end of the previous year. So that is, say book value at the end of the last year, okay, say n, the total number of years is n, book value at the beginning of last year n is equal to book value at the end of the previous year. Previous year is nothing but n minus 1 year. So this guideline you should remember. Now how to find the average value of the machine? Just now I told you, you take the average of the initial book value, that is nothing but your purchase price, and the book value at the beginning of the last year of the life of the machine. Last year is nothing but the end of the previous year, end of n minus 1 year. So book value at the beginning of the last year n is same as the book value at the end of n minus 1 year. So that is what we have written here. Book value at the beginning of last year n is same as book value at the end of n minus 1 year. So we have taken that into this and we are finding the average now, divide by 2. Okay. Now I hope you remember what we discussed for the straight line depreciation method. So how to calculate the annual depreciation using straight line accounting method? It is nothing but the difference between your purchase price and the salvage value divided by number of years in the useful life of the machine. That will give you the annual depreciation using straight line method. So difference between the initial cost of the machine minus the salvage value divided by the n, it gives you the annual depreciation which is occurring every year, which is going to be same for every year in the straight line method of depreciation. Now another important thing you have to keep in your mind, how to find the book value at the end of a particular year. Okay, so this thing I have discussed in the earlier lecture. Okay, so book value at the for a particular period. Okay, book value at the end of particular period, say at the end of kth year. I just wanted to find the book value at the end of kth year. So how will you find that? If you know the initial cost of the machine, purchase price of the machine minus the accumulated depreciation for the k years. Okay, so what is the accumulated depreciation for k years? Okay, so that will give you the current book value at the end of the kth year. Okay, so when we follow the straight line depreciation, the depreciation is going to be same for every year. So in that case, how to find that? P minus k into d. Okay, d is the depreciation for every year using straight line method. So number of years is k. Okay, k into d. So this will give me the book value at the end of the kth year. Okay, so that is what is written here. Book value at the end of any year k is nothing but P minus k into d. Okay, the initial cost minus the accumulated depreciation for the k number of years. Similarly, for book value at the end of n minus 1 year, I need to calculate. Book value at the end of n minus 1 year, I need to calculate. So the initial cost is nothing but P minus n minus 1 years multiplied by the depreciation. Okay, if you go by straight line method, P minus n minus 1 into d. Okay, that is what is written here. Okay, book value at the end of n minus 1 year is nothing but initial cost minus n minus 1 years multiplied by the depreciation for every year. Now substitute the value of depreciation. Okay, from the earlier thing, whatever you got, d equal to P minus s by n. Okay, substitute that in this equation. Now you will get P minus n minus 1 into P minus s by n. P minus s by n. Now what you do? You substitute this equation 3 in the first equation. Your first equation is nothing but your average value of the machine. Okay, instead of BV n minus 1, okay, whatever you have derived, you substitute this BV n minus 1 in that. You can express everything in terms of P, S and n. So that is what we are doing. Now, so you will get this P plus, instead of this BV n minus 1, we have substituted this one here. Okay, so P minus n minus 1 into P minus s by n divided by 2. You simplify it, you will get the average value of the machine as this. So we have to remember this formula, P into n plus 1 plus s into n minus 1 divided by 2n to get the average value of the machine over its useful life n. Okay, say if the salvage value of the machine is 0, then this will disappear. Your formula will become P into n plus 1 divided by 2n. That will give you the average value of the machine in case salvage value is 0 at the end of the useful life of the machine. So this formula you are going to remember, and all the components of the ownership cost we are going to express as a percentage of the average value of the machine when you follow this methodology for the estimation of the ownership cost. So P is a purchase price Obviously, you have to deduct the cost of tires because tire cost will be considered under the operating cost. Then S is the estimated salvage value and N is the service life of the machine. So, other components of the ownership cost, there is the cost of capital, investment cost, your taxes, insurance, storage cost, everything is expressed as a percentage of the average value of the machine. That is nothing but average annual investment over the life of the machine. Now, let us work out an example on how to estimate the ownership cost of the machine using average annual investment method. Okay. A twin engine scraper machine has an initial cost of 82 lakhs. So, this includes its tire cost of 6 lakh. The expected salvage value of the equipment at the end of the useful life of 9 years is 12 lakh. So, the useful life of the machine is 9 years. At the end of the 9 years, I will be able to sell the machine at a price of 12 lakh. Now, the annual use of the equipment is 2400 hours. So, it depends upon every day how many hours your equipment is going to be operated and how many days are you going to work in a year. Depending upon that, you can find what is the annual use of the equipment in the hours. Calculate the hourly ownership cost. So, we always prefer to estimate the equipment cost in on hourly basis. So, we are going to calculate it using AAI method, average annual investment method, and we are going to follow the straight line method to estimate the depreciation to make it more easier. So, this is a summary of the input data given: initial cost, your tire cost, life of the machine, the salvage value, interest, the cost of investment, interest on investment is 9%, insurance cost 2%, taxes 2.5%, storage cost is 1%, your fuel price is given, it will be used for operating cost estimation basically. Then annual operating hours is 2400 hours. So, with this as an input data, now we are going to estimate the ownership cost for this particular machine using AAI method. So, how to find this AAI, average annual investment? Okay, we know the formula P into N plus 1 plus S into N minus 1 by 2N. Okay, so we are going to use this formula to determine. So, you know P is nothing but 76 lakhs. Hope you know how to determine the 76 lakhs. So, the purchase price of the initial cost of the machine is 82 lakh. The tire cost is 6 lakhs. So, 82 lakhs minus 6 lakhs gives you 76 lakhs. Okay, 76 lakhs into N is 9. So, 9 plus 1 plus salvage value is 12 lakh into N minus 1, that is 9 minus 1 divided by 2 into 9. This gives you the average value of the machine. It is nothing but 47 lakh 55,555.56 per year. Now, estimate your investment, taxes, insurance and storage as a percentage of the average value of the machine. How to estimate it? You know the investment cost is 9%, tax is 2.5, insurance 2%, storage is 1%. Okay, add everything, find the percentage of the average annual investment. And we wanted the hourly cost, so divide it by number of hours of usage of machine in a year. So, annual usage of the machine in hours, 2400 hours, divided, you will get the hourly cost of all these components of the ownership cost. Okay. Now, we are ready to determine the depreciation cost, which is also an important component of the ownership cost. Okay. So, depreciation, we are going to follow straight line method as it was asked to follow the straight line method in this problem. Okay. You know how to find the straight line depreciation. It is nothing but initial cost minus salvage value minus your tire cost divided by your, so initial cost is 82 lakh, salvage value 12 lakh and your tire cost is 6 lakh divided by number of years is 9, you multiply it by the 2400 hours so that you can get the hourly cost directly. Okay, you will get the hourly cost of depreciation. Now, add up all the ownership cost. So, this is your the depreciation cost and these are the other ownership components, your insurance, taxes, storage, cost of investment, everything add up, you will get the total hourly ownership cost using the average annual investment method. So, this is how we estimate the ownership cost using AAI method. So, let me now summarize what are all the points we have discussed so far. So, basically introduce to you what is the significance of the estimation of the equipment cost, because equipment cost will serve as a basis for the bid preparation of the project. Your equipment cost need to be accurate, you should have a thorough knowledge on how to estimate the cost of the equipment, then only you will be able to plan your bid properly, because your equipment cost forms a part of your project cost. So if you underestimate your equipment cost, you may overestimate your profit in paper, and finally you may end up in problem. Okay, so you should have a knowledge on how to estimate the equipment cost. And what are all the components of ownership cost? We have seen it's made up of the initial purchase price, cost of depreciation, cost of investment, taxes, insurance and storage. So then we discuss what is depreciation. It is nothing but the loss of value of the machine between the time it is purchased and time it is replaced. So there will be a gradual loss in any asset with time. That loss in value of the asset is depreciation. Then there are different methods, and we found the double declining balance method and some of the years digit method models accelerated depreciation in the early age of the machine. And people prefer accelerated depreciation because it gives you tax benefits. And we have to determine the average machine value over the useful life of the machine if you are going to use average annual investment method to estimate the ownership cost. And how to derive the average machine value we have discussed just now. So these are the textbooks to which I have referred for this particular lecture. Okay, so you can try to procure these textbooks for the future reference. So with this I would like to end up the lecture 2. Thank you.